Hi folks, welcome to the next episode of Approachable Support at Home. So a lot of the time when we are considering providing support around dating, love, relationships, sex, or sexuality, we might start out by wondering, is this even going to be relevant for this person that I'm supporting, either my family member or somebody who I'm providing professional support for? We might be wondering, do they have the capacity to understand what a romantic relationship looks like? Do they have the skills that are required to take part in a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship? Do they have the skills to be safe in a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship? So these are all really worthwhile questions, and we're going to dive into them today. As we go through this series, we'll be making reference to the Real Talk website from time to time. You can reach it at real-talk.org. There's lots of videos there, lots of resources, lots of information. So maybe just open it in another window and be prepared to click over to that window from time to time as we go through this. So as we go through this series, I think it might be worthwhile for me to mention that before working for Real Talk, I spent more than 25 years working in the community living sector. Most of that time was spent working in group homes and in day programs, sometimes in resource classes with folks with diverse abilities. And most of my time spent in those places was not spent working as a manager or a supervisor. Most of it was spent working directly with the individuals that we're going to be discussing today. And I mention this because I'm going to be asking us all to do a little bit of reflection on maybe some of our hunches about the folks that we're working with, maybe asking us to look at some of our preconceived notions about the folks that we're working with. So when I'm asking us to do this together, it's not from a point of view of trying to make anybody wrong, but maybe from the point of view of trying to get us all to think a little bit differently. So on that note, I'd like us all to maybe sit and think about some of the folks that we've worked with over the years. Probably, for most of us, some of the folks that we've worked with over the years, we have a hunch that support around dating, love, relationships, sex, sexuality is going to be relevant. Maybe we think it's going to be relevant because they've straight up asked us, help me find a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife. And there's also probably going to be some folks who we've worked with over the years where our hunch is dating, love, romance, sex, sexuality is just not going to be relevant for them. It's not going to be on their radar. So think about some folks for whom you think, oh yes, this would definitely be relevant for them. And then think about some folks who you've supported where you think, it's probably not going to be that relevant for them. And there's no judgment around that either. There's some folks for whom maybe they hate cooking, so me offering them a course on Thai cooking is not going to be relevant for them. They're just not interested. They're just not into it. Now for those folks where you think, it's not going to be relevant, maybe just take a quick moment to think about why is it not going to be relevant for them. Is it maybe that they don't understand about dating and relationships? We don't know if they have the capacity to even understand what a relationship is. Just whatever that reason might be, why you think, for this person, probably not so relevant. Next up, we're going to examine something called the 5 love languages. Now, you've probably heard of these before. They've been quite popular in pop culture recently as a framework for understanding relationships and compatibility and things like that. The idea is that people like to give and receive love in different ways, and that no one of these ways is any better or worse than any of the others. They're just different, and we all have our way, or usually probably multiple ways that we like to give love and that we like to receive love. So the 5 love languages, according to this framework, one of them is words of affirmation. So saying to the person that you love, I love you, I really value you, I respect you, or you're a really good person. Words that really build them up. Some people like to give love by saying such words. Some people like to receive love by hearing these words from their partner. For some folks, one of the love languages that they like to use is gifts. Some people really like to give their partner a gift. It doesn't have to be a new car necessarily. It can be something simple as like picking up a gift like some flowers on the way home from work, just to let your partner know that you're thinking of them and that this gift is a little token showing that they mean something to you. For some folks, it might be acts of service. Say you know that your partner really hates to pick up the dry cleaning because they don't like driving in rush hour traffic. So even though it's farther away for you to go and pick up the dry cleaning, you're going to do it for them because you know that they hate doing that job and you want to do something nice for them. So acts of service. That's another way that people like to give love or receive love. For some folks, it's quality time. That's just intentional time spent with the other person, either doing stuff that you both really like to do or maybe just chilling out. But it's time that you're intentionally spending with one another where you are the focus of one another's thoughts. And then the last one is physical touch. Sometimes people think this refers only to sexual touch, but it doesn't. It could be something like, a back rub, or a hug, or cuddling under a blanket watching some Netflix, especially now during COVID. It doesn't have to be sexual touch, but just physical touch, physical affection that is felt by bodies. Now down below, you're going to see a link that you can click to take a really quick quiz that will tell you what some of your preferred love languages are. It only takes about maybe 5 minutes to complete, so why not pause this video for a second, go to that link, and check it out and find out what your preferred love languages are. And then we're going to come back and watch a film. Okay, if you're back now from taking the love languages quiz, we're going to check out this film called David and Adeline, which is about a couple of folks in England. And for me, it was a very moving film and it was very thought-provoking as well. So we're going to check it out now and then we're going to do a little bit of reflection. Here's David and Adeline.
I think it's about 10 years ago that I met David and Adeline. What I remember about them when I first met them was that they both sat in the same chair in this chaotic house, really, that was very big, so it was very noisy, quite a lot of conflict. So what I felt when I first met them was actually they sat in the chair together to keep each other safe, and actually they just kind of sat quietly and looked out for each other, really. And then they moved into their house a few months after that, which they rent, so they're tenants in their own home.
When we started, I think there was a judgment of, and me being part of it as well. I didn't see the relationship. I just used to think there are two people who live together.
I think we didn't get that right at first in terms of David and Adeline being partners, because I think there's a real taboo about people like David and Adeline being partners. So it was fine that they were friends, but somehow that shift to it being much more than that took us a little while, I think.
When we started leaving them on their own, that's when, for me, that's when I noticed that the intimacy was different from being a friend. The way they were with each other when there's no one was different when you just leave them on their own.
Just from following David and Adeline's lead and watching and noticing all the little things that they did to show each other how much they cared, I suppose in a way he was showing us that that was right for them and that they were okay with it. They didn't have a problem with it at all. They were fine. So things like if Adeline went out without David, if he was in the house, would wait at the window and look out of the window all the time to see if she was coming, and when she came would be really, really excited and just welcome her back, really. Addie sits on the sofa, and the minute she hears the door, you can see she's looking to see who it is, and when it's David, it's like, wow, and she's really pleased to see him. And if I was David, I would know absolutely that she's really pleased to see me, and she takes his shoes off, she takes his socks off, and it's like, oh, you're home, and I'm glad you're back.
What happened is Adeline used to kiss David, and you don't really kiss your brother, really, or your friends. And that's how people came to realize, oh, there might be something here that we don't really see. And people started listening to them and watching and looking. So that's how they came to see that there's something special.
And I think we had this kind of aha moment when Sheba, who worked in the team, just said, well, they are a couple. So why aren't we saying that? And it's like, yeah, she's right. The way they choose to be intimate together has changed, and they're really clear now when they want us to go out of the room. I think there's a whole taboo about people with learning difficulties having relationships, and there's loads of stuff around that. There's all the stuff about what if they have children. There's also the stuff about, do people have capacity? So is it exploitative? So I think there's a lot of stuff that people aren't sure about. And I think that what happens is staff and people who are trying to work out how to protect people get a bit confused about keeping people safe, because actually David and Adeline are much safer because of their relationship than they would be if that wasn't present or if that wasn't recognised. I think that their story could really help other people. Somebody who knows David and Adeline through working with Get Alive told their story in Prague, and it was really exciting because some people who were in the audience who have disabilities came to the speaker at the end and said, we've been in a relationship for years but we've never told anybody because it's not allowed, but we've just told our support worker and now we want to get married. And you think, wow, that's an amazing thing, that just hearing David and Adeline's story has meant someone else can have that chance, really. If we were thinking about what we'd want people to take from David and Adeline's story, I suppose if you're someone with a learning difficulty, maybe it is that it's possible to have a really loving relationship where you're a partner, and that's okay, and that there's nothing abnormal about that it's kind of what most people want and most people aspire to, I guess. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And I guess in the journey of, like, David and Adeline moving from a hospital to living in a nursing home to having their own home, once you've got your own home, it shouldn't finish there. So actually, I think that's what's happened for lots of people with learning difficulties. They've got a nice home and support, but actually the next bit is the real, well, how do we help people have really meaningful relationships in their community with the people supporting them and with each other if they're lucky enough to meet somebody. Adeline's sisters and brothers are mainly in relationships, some of them are married, so probably she would be married if she didn't have a learning difficulty, if she had a partner like she does. The kind of compromise was a blessing at the church and a celebration of their relationship was what it was called. And it was perfect. I don't know how David and Adeline knew how to do that day, but they did. David waited really quietly in his suit for Adeline to get ready. Adeline had stuff in her hair that she doesn't usually tolerate. She wore makeup that she kept on. She just walked down the stairs in this beautiful dress that she didn't stand on or trip over or anything. She just did the whole thing really, really well. And at the church, what I remember about the church is that David spent time either by his mum or with Adeline. So it felt like he was just making sure that both of them were okay, really.
Even some of the staff members, they thought it can't happen. How do we know that it can happen? And when it happened, it was just memorable. And David and Adi seems to know what exactly they were meant to do, because they did it perfectly. Yeah. And David's mom was also very pleased with seeing David getting married to Adi, really, and telling the whole world that he wants to live with this lady. Yeah. So yeah.
I think everyone just embraced it, because that's what they wanted. So they celebrated it.
So now that we've seen this film, let's take a little bit of time to reflect. How did the various different love languages show up in David and Adeline? What were some of the ways that they used to show one another that they really loved one another? Certainly some of the things that I noticed when I was watching this video were that they used a lot of physical touch, and some of the physical touch that they used we might not think of as being the most common kinds of physical touch. For example, there's one moment where we see David sort of lying on his side on the couch and Adeline sort of sitting on his head, and they both seem to be perfectly content with that arrangement, and it's a way that they're being physically close with one another. There's another place where we see David and Adeline eating at the kitchen table, and I think David is kind of it looks almost like he's kind of kicking Adeline, but it could also be that he's sort of caressing Adeline's leg with his foot. Now again, this might not be a way that we would like to receive loving touch from a partner, but it seems to work for them. Now another love language is words of affirmation, and David and Adeline don't use words. They don't communicate using words, but they do communicate using their voices, certainly. And we see in the movie that when David has gone out and then he's come back, Adeline greets him at the door and is very, very happy to see him and makes a lot of noise and lets David know that she's really, really happy that he's back.
Addie sits on the sofa, and the minute she hears the door, you can see she's looking to see who it is. And when it's David, it's like, wow, and she's really pleased to see him.
So even though they don't use words of affirmation, they're definitely using verbal communication to let one another know that they're loved. Another love language is acts of service. And one thing that we see in this video is that when David comes home from being out somewhere, Adeline will help him take off his shoes. Now this may be something that David could do on his own, but it's something that Adeline likes to do for David to let him know that she really loves him. One thing that we hear about David and Adeline is that they spend a great deal of time together, so the love language of quality time is clearly something that they are using with one another to let one another know that they love each other. There's a story that earlier on, before they shared a house just on their own, they were in a house with other people and they would choose to spend time together in that larger house where there were more people around. So that was a way that they were showing one another that they loved each other and that they cared about each other. And it was actually one of the things that got the staff thinking that maybe these two love each other. Now the next question I'd like us all to reflect on is if you had never seen this movie and you met David by himself, maybe he came up to you at a day program you were working at and it was your first time meeting him, would you be surprised to learn that he was in a romantic relationship? Now this question for me was really quite uncomfortable. And the reason why is because I've certainly supported folks over the years who have told me in so many words, I want a girlfriend, I want a boyfriend, help me find one. Now when somebody tells me that really directly, I know that it's something that they want to have in their life, and so it's something that I'm thinking I should really try to provide some support around. But I know that there are some folks who I've supported over the years. Maybe they don't communicate using words. Maybe they don't communicate using language. Folks who are in this situation, I might not think that they would be capable of having a romantic relationship because I have some ideas about what kinds of capacities people need to have, what kind of understanding, what kind of skills they need to have a romantic relationship. And if I met David and I saw this is a fellow who's nonverbal, he needs support around getting dressed, he needs support around meal times, he needs a lot of personal care. If I was meeting David for the first time at a day program and somebody asked me, hey, do you think he could be in a romantic relationship? Until I saw this movie, I would probably think no, he couldn't. So that's actually a place of growth and a place of discomfort for me, I know. This movie really revealed to me what some of my prejudices were about who was capable of having a relationship and who wasn't. The next thing I'd like us to reflect on is if David and Adeline met at a day program and started acting this way towards one another, what would happen? And there's no right or wrong answer to this question. I like to think that if they were lucky, and that they were in a day program where there was open conversation about dating and relationship and support around romance and sexuality, that folks might notice, oh, these folks really have some kind of cool connection here. Maybe this is something that we can help them nurture. Maybe this is something that we can help them grow. But I know that certainly at some of the day programs that I've worked at, if we saw some of these behaviors, particularly like David sitting and kicking at Adeline's leg with his foot, or Adeline sitting on David's head on the couch, we might be very concerned. Is this safe? Is this something that's consensual? I know that in some cases, some of the places that I've worked, my first instinct might be like, oh my gosh, maybe this is non-consensual. Maybe I need to get in there right away and break this up because it might not be okay. And that's actually in many ways a good instinct. We want to make sure that folks are safe and that anything that's going on is consensual. But I know that in my own practice over the years, I might have erred so much on the side of caution that I would start splitting them apart whenever I saw those kinds of physical affection things because I was concerned and that David and Adeline might conclude from that this sort of thing isn't okay, it's not allowed, it's against the rules, and that they then might miss out on that opportunity to build that kind of loving relationship. Now, at one point, one of the workers in this film says David and Adeline are actually much safer because of their relationship. And I think it's worthwhile for us to reflect on how does their relationship make them safer. Now, certainly we know in this film that earlier they lived in a house with other people that was sort of violent and chaotic, and they made it very clear when they were living in that house that they enjoyed spending time together. And that meant that when they split up that house and got people moving into other places, that David and Adeline, their relationship as friends, as they were understood to be at that time, meant that they got to move into a house together that was probably safer than the house that they were in before. So there's that. But one thing that I've heard from people who have seen this film is that they think that David and Adeline's relationship makes them safer because it gives them meaning to their lives. Something to wake up in the morning for, something to carry on through the day for, something to live for, quite frankly. Many of us find a lot of meaning in our jobs and our hobbies, but for many of us, a lot of our meaning in our lives comes from our family, our loved ones, our partners. So in the same way that our families and our partners give our life meaning and give us a reason to live, a reason to go on sometimes, David and Adeline's relationship makes them safer because it gives them that same meaning, that same reason to get up in the morning and keep on living life. Now I'm going to ask everyone to think back and reflect on that person who they thought maybe support around dating, love, relationships, sex, sexuality would not be relevant for. I'm going to ask you to reflect on whether, having seen David and Adeline's story, whether you are reconsidering whether or not that person might actually be able to have a meaningful, life-affirming, joy-bringing romantic relationship like David and Adeline have found. And if you conclude, like I did, that maybe some of the folks I've supported over the years who I thought wouldn't be capable of this sort of thing might be capable of this sort of thing given the right circumstances, then maybe the next big question for all of us is what can we do as family members, as professional support staff, maybe as folks who are supervising programs, what can we do to make it more likely that more of these kinds of amazing relationships might be able to flourish? That's it. That's what we've got for today, folks. So please tune in. We're going to have some more episodes really soon. And until then, I wish the very best for you and your family during this time of social distancing. I hope that everyone's keeping healthy, and we'll be in touch soon.